Well, today on Rethink Real Estate, it's Chad and I going over some of the reasons, like trying to get him in role play, trying to get him in the middle of a pitch of how he goes out and he pitches expired listings when it comes to the auction process. I think that this is an important element for anybody that's looking to actually use auction as a tool in their tool belt in order to enhance their business and prospect. But also, I think that if you're not somebody that's cold calling, I think that it's a really good understanding of a lot of little elevator pitches of why the auction process will suit better than traditional in many of the situations, regardless of whether it's been on the marketplace previously or not. This is the team that does some of the highest volume of prospecting and pitching of auction. And again, they're out there doing it on a very big daily basis. And Chad and I speak about all of the elements and all of the intricacies of why somebody that's done traditional and then maybe wants to relist should do auction, or whether or not someone should just do auction from the very onset. Okay, the pricing elements, everything, all the things that we go through today. Hopefully it helps. Welcome to Rethink Real Estate. My name is Ben Brady, and this is a real estate podcast aimed to deliver sales strategies, marketing tips, and business insights from industry experts and myself to build a listing-focused business for the future. Let's get into it. Welcome back to Rethink Real Estate, mate.
It's good to be here, bud.
So let's cut straight to the chase here, because the reason that I've got you on today is that there's definitely a trend in the real estate marketplace at the moment where inventory levels are increasing. Certainly in your marketplace, you're seeing that anything under $2 million is moving pretty quickly in a multiple offer situation. But then also there's some that aren't as well, depending. But
Sure.
But the one thing I will say, mate, is that you're doing this more than most, in the sense that you're reaching out to sellers that have had their property on and off the marketplace, or it's currently expired and they're wondering, what should we do because of multiple price reductions? What are you telling them?
Well, I think this is where we have a great opportunity having the auction platform, because most agents are reaching out to sellers, calling them, asking for a price reduction, or saying they're going to offer some new marketing tool, but really they're looking for a price reduction. We have a plan that we can revitalize these properties using the luxury auction platform, where all of a sudden the sellers can take back control of their properties by, instead of lowering the price and guessing where the market is going to be, they put a new strategy in where they do a starting to bid from price, where now all of a sudden they have control because they are receiving multiple offers. They are receiving a lot of interest. So when you talk to a seller that's had the experience of being on the market for 90, 100, 180 days, and they hear about our 30-day platform, it usually really resonates with them.
Well, I think that there's a part of this also that I want to drill down into, because there's obviously the word auction is a bit of a jolting word in the first degree of any situation that you mention to somebody. So let's say you're on the phone and you call a seller and you say, hey, we have a non-distressed auction platform or a luxury auction platform. What is the typical response you get?
I mean, usually it's quite negative. It's like, oh, my house is not distressed, or I'm not in a situation where I have to sell. And I go, great. And so when I said the word auction, it obviously made you think of something or triggered something. What does that word make you think of? You taught me that, and it's really effective to kind of get under to find out what their thought process is behind auction. And then we go into the fact that we're the sixth largest real estate company in the world. We do over 12,000 non-distressed auctions each year. We don't deal in the distressed market. And just like fine jewelry is sold, artwork sold, there's great car shows that are about it. That's how your house is a rare commodity, and the best way to sell it is through auction. You tried traditional. Let's try an absolutely different strategy, and that's what we offer them.
I think that, can we talk about traditional agency for a moment?
Sure.
I think that the cycle of traditional real estate, let's face it, is that a buyer goes, in the traditional real estate sense, an agent goes into that listing presentation, and most of the time, and again, Chad, you run a large brokerage, you're the business owner of that brokerage, you are one of the most successful agents in Orange County. So the reality is, the reality is you can actually speak to this. Agents go in and they essentially promise a price, right?
1,000%.
And I guess that's where most people are getting in trouble at the moment. So if we were to look at it, and I was to look at just South Orange County for a moment, do you know that if you do one price reduction on your property, there's a 72% likelihood that you need to do two more before that property goes into escrow, which erodes away, but it erodes away completely any leverage that you have in that situation. So why do you think that a traditional agent walks into that listing presentation and overpromises on price?
Because that's how you win the listing. I mean, sellers are still have really high expectations of what houses are selling for. And in many cases, they're correct, but in many situations, they're also not. And because agents don't really have much to offer, the best thing they can do is sell the seller on the fact that they can price their home the highest and sell them on a dream that unfortunately they can't fulfill. Whereas the fact when I go into a presentation, I'm pitching auction, I never promise a price. I only promise a process that will find the absolute highest price possible for their home in the shortest amount of time. So I'm never the agent that's going to promise the price. But again, the process that we have will ultimately find the highest price the market will bear in the shortest period of time.
And I think that that's really a strategic edge when it comes to your competitors, because at the end of the day, I just don't understand what a traditional agent goes in there and promises in the beginning. I get they promise a price, but after 2 weeks on the marketplace, at the end of the day, if that property hasn't sold at that point, it becomes a really slippery slope. And
Quickly, yes,
and I guess that if you're in a like because there's a part of this also, Chad, that you guys list traditional real estate all the time, but
of course.
you're presenting an option to your clients around saying, hey, I've got traditional, but then we can go auction, or hey, we can go auction and go traditional. Can you tell me how that sort of plays out from an option perspective?
I love it. So most agents are going in and just offering the price and their marketing plan, right? And you and I know, Ben, there's not a whole lot of difference between one agent to the next if they're at a high level in regards to what marketing they're going to do on a property. When I get to go to a listing presentation, I actually have something to say. I can offer the traditional approach, which many times most sellers know about, but I also can offer the auction approach. And I go in there and that's my listing presentation. I have traditional and I have auction. Here are the benefits of this. Here are the benefits of this. In this market, I highly recommend using the auction approach since there's still more demand than there is supply. We're able to bid that price up to find that absolute highest price. But I always give my sellers that opportunity to choose, and people love choices. So it doesn't come down to, what agent are they going to choose, what mark. It's which way are we going to run the process? They pick it and we run with it.
Would you guys call yourselves, and when I say you guys, the Green Group, would you
Sure.
guys call yourselves the doctors of real estate? And I want to throw out a
Yes,
disclaimer
I
here for a
would.
minute.
The kings of real estate, the presidents of real estate.
No, but I say doctor because you go in and you fix situations.
That's our special. That is really our specialty. If a house has been on the market before, I genuinely feel we can go in and help people, and that's really the approach that I take. You know me; I try to be a pretty genuine guy in the marketplace, and I do believe with our process we can go in and help people, and that's our approach. But if we didn't have auction, we really wouldn't be able to help people other than just slashing their price. When we bring in this process, we give the property a new chance to be revitalized to the marketplace. So yes, I think that the doctor approach is a good way to think about what we're able to do. However, we offer auction as the first choice as well, many times. And again, when I sold my house that way. I'd sell all of my properties that way. I always push for that. But again, everybody wants choices, and they have the right to choose whichever way they think is best for their property.
Can we use your property as an example, maybe as a case study for people? Is that I think that it's obviously usually one of the biggest testaments that you can ever go into is when you yourself use the concept and the process to sell your own asset.
Sure.
And, you guys got a tremendous result on your property. And I would go as far as to say from when we were there, you guys probably got about $500 to $600,000 more than market value at the time because of the competition that it ultimately generated with a negotiation up with no ceiling. But where did you guys stand from a perspective of using it in the first degree? Because it's nerve-wracking to do it on your own asset.
It is nerve wracking to do it on our own asset, but again, believed in the process and trusted the people behind it. And had we had listed that house traditionally based upon the comps of what had sold in the neighborhood historically, we would have left about $1 million on the table. And I don't exaggerate by saying that. Literally, the next comp below us was about $1 million less than what we got. And auction allowed us to get to that property and reset the comps in the entire neighborhood. But again, traditionally, we would have been held back. Could we have gotten multiple offers and bid the price up? Sure, but we would have never had the forum and the ability to get to where we ultimately sold the property.
I think there was something to be said about, the competition that the auction process created for your property itself. I still remember the open houses there. I think there was an element of social validation of other people coming through and the collective nature of everybody there at the same time that allowed people to forget the market that they might have been in or the property that they were in. Not to say that it wasn't worth it, because it presented stunningly, by the way, but it was more so the element of the fact that people are so caught up in the hype that it just drives that social acceptance of, hey, other people want this. This is what I want as well. Yeah.
Without a doubt. I mean, the crowds, and then the 20 offers we had on the property. I mean, everybody that was involved, you couldn't help but get caught up in it. And especially if you were a buyer and you had the means to purchase the property, you couldn't help getting caught up in the hype and the competition and the bidding. And that's how we ultimately ended up where we were. And it's the prime example of it.
Well, I think that there's another part of this that I want to go to the polar opposite side of auction, Chad. I want to talk about the situations where you and your team have gone in, the property hasn't sold traditionally, and ultimately we've taken it through to auction in order to try and revitalize that reputation of the property. But when we put it back on the marketplace, it hasn't had the pop of interest that we normally see,
Sure.
right? At that time, I guess that I want you to talk me through what the process looks like when it hasn't gone exactly the way we wanted to, because there's still this added advantage of the leverage that it creates before auction.
Without a doubt. I mean, again, of course, there's those situations where we're not getting the interest or the offers that the seller wants, but we always get the education from the market. We always get enough people through the properties to find out in real time what the value of the home is worth, or what the perceived value of the property is worth. And we're always able to get that information back to our sellers. First, a lot of times we have a house on the market, we don't receive any offers, we have minimal showings. When that happens, how do we provide feedback to our sellers? We have nothing to tell them other than, they didn't like the refrigerator you chose. That's not feedback. We've always talked about price is feedback. So when we switch it over to an auction, we may not achieve the level of prices or offers that they were hoping to expect, but we get them feedback. We provide them information. We are the doctor in the situation, and we say, hey, this is where the market is today. Based upon this information, what would you like to do? And yet again, we've given our sellers choices, and we're able to help navigate them through whatever they're deciding to do with their property.
I think there's an element of shock in all of this that when you guys pitch a solution that ultimately is a solution to the traditional process that hasn't worked for them, there's a level of skepticism from a seller. But I guess that when it comes to the volume of results that you guys have had and the case studies that you can provide, that can lead them to a level of confidence that this is the process for them. I guess that the other part of this also, with your experience helping sellers really revitalize reputation and bring them back to marketplace to get what they want, the answer is the biggest thing that you can sell them on. It's not, hey, look, if it sells and the seller is in complete control, but it's the answer of, hey, this is what your home is worth in today's market. Just keep it or rent it or choose to accept it.
And that's it. And we're able to confidently say that to a seller because of the amount of data that we're able to produce. 100 people through the property, 3, 6, 9 offers. It's not me having this opinion or coming up with some magical opinion. The data speaks for itself, and I present the data to the seller, and it's up to them to choose what to do with their property. But I think that's also what's so exciting about auction is, again, whether that property that we're talking about ends up selling or not is irrelevant. It's the fact that we were able to get them the information that they needed or that they wanted so that they can form their own decision and their own conclusion. Because ultimately, it's the seller's house to do as they please with.
Well, I think that there's a part of this also where I want to do a little comparison of traditional real estate versus auction.
All right.
And one of the biggest things and concepts that I'm very unsettled with, and I know that you share the same opinion as me, and I think it's a point that should be shared, is that I really don't like the idea in traditional real estate that a buyer can walk in the door, put an offer on the table that they really don't mean, and then they have all of these contingencies attached. And then that property, at that point, the buyer has taken it off the market. They have all the leverage in the negotiation, and they can negotiate after the fact of buying the property and taking it off the market. Or if the property falls out of escrow, the reputation is tarnished when there's actually nothing wrong with that property. Whereas auction, it's vastly different, isn't it?
Absolutely. I mean, one of the biggest takeaways from auction is the fact that we do everything up front: inspections, disclosures, all the information about the property is readily available to anybody that's interested in the house. And what that does is it makes it so when we do accept an offer, the buyer has reviewed all of that, and it really limits contingencies, sometimes to the point of being a non-contingent offer, where in typical traditional real estate, you simply cannot do that. And honestly, this is one thing I've stolen from auction and on our traditional listings. I almost insist that our sellers do this just because it increases their probability of actually closing escrow once we accept an offer.
Why do you think people don't do all of that due diligence and work up front on a traditional listing if they're a listing agent and advising it? Is it a case that they don't know what they don't know most of the time?
Honestly, I think there's an added cost involved with doing it that way. There's added effort. It takes a little bit longer to launch the property. So in most cases, I think agents are a little impatient with that and don't think big picture with presenting that to their client. I mean, it's not easy going in to tell your seller that, hey, I want you to spend more money, spend money up front that in the long term is going to save them tens, if not hundreds of thousands. It's another tougher conversation that you have to have early on that I don't think, most agents are willing to have.
So let me just ask a couple of hypothetical questions here. So asking you the question, if I'm a seller at the moment and I'm sitting in the marketplace and for some reason I'm watching this and my home is on the marketplace and my agent has already asked me to do a price reduction and they're asking me to do another, or I'm sitting on the market at my traditional list price and it's not moving and I'm not getting much action from my agent, what should I be considering or what should I be doing or what should I be thinking?
Can I yell on the screen? Do not lower your price. I mean, do not do price reductions. If you do, you're just guessing what the market wants to see or expects out of the house. A price reduction is the killer of a property. Switch to auction. Give the luxury auction platform a chance to find out the value of your home. But a price reduction, it's the first step towards death in this market, is lowering the price of your house.
Well, I think one of the big misconceptions with auction is that I have to sell it for whatever turns up on the day. Is that the case?
It's absolutely not the case. You're always in full control with our auction model. You're always in control as a seller. We could exceed your expectations, and you still don't have to sell. We're not an absolute auction company. You only sell if we bring you the price and terms that you've set for us.
So, what is it that protects me?
There's a non-disclosed reserve that only you and I, as your agent and our auction team, know about. And that's the goal that we're striving for as it pertains to price. Our goal is to try to hit that or exceed that. And you set that price. You can always change it, raise it, lower it, depending on what the market's saying. But even if we crush that non-disclosed reserve price and you decide you don't want to sell, you never have to. And that's what I always drive home to sellers. There's literally no risk in running this process. There's huge risk lowering your price and then lowering it again and hoping you get it right at some point that one buyer is going to come out of the woods and buy your house. That is a ridiculous strategy.
I just, it's one of those things that you look back on into a community when you look at real estate, sort of in your local marketplace. I'm sure that you do the same thing with your property. You sit there and you look and you see people make reductions, and it's like my value of my property is eroding away from the lack of skill set of that other traditional agent just asking them to do price reductions, when if they looked for a little bit more of an innovative process of actually thinking outside of the box and creating a negotiation up instead of one down incrementally from a price, it could change that landscape of real estate, because other realtors and sellers in their own circumstances are harming the expectations of then your property.
I think that's going to change with everything going on in the market. That complacency in real estate agents isn't going to be acceptable by clients or sellers any longer. The old way of putting a price tag on the house and then forgetting about it, moving on to your next property, I don't think is going to be accepted much longer in the real estate market. You're going to have an active and aggressive approach to drive buyers to properties, and that's exactly what we have. And I do want to make one point on that. One of the biggest things that sellers ask us when we're presenting to them is they think that we've come up with this new concept or that we're the latest tech company trying to push this on them. And we're like, no, our company has been around since 1888. It's one of the oldest, if not the oldest, real estate company in the world, the oldest auction house in the world. So we're not reinventing the wheel here. We're just presenting an option that they may not be aware of. And I think that's a critical piece for them to always understand, because people get scared of new. But when people see that it's been established and it's been around for 130 some odd years, it gives them the comfort to know that they're not the trailblazer of this. They're just one of the tens of hundreds of thousands of people that have already done this in the past.
Yeah, well, I think that the other part from our company perspective, not only being the largest and oldest non-distressed auction company in the world, is that also from a North America basis at the moment, we're doing in excess of a few $1 billion a year of auctions here locally, from price points from $45 million in Bel Air all the way down to a few $100,000 condos. The diversity of this platform being able to operate in many different markets is the real key part of that. And you guys yourself have been experienced that in the luxury and also in the normal price points of properties. Does it vary in any way?
No, and that's what I love about the process is it works. We always have the claim to fame. In 1 month we sold a $120,000 trailer home in Laguna Beach and a $20 million house in Hollywood Hills. And I always make that point to when I'm meeting with people is that it just shows the range at which this process works. This isn't for one type of property. This is for all types of properties. It's just whether or not the seller is open to the strategy.
Yeah, I think that there's another thing that I'm fascinated with when it comes to your company, or the way that you guys operate. And the one added advantage that I see that you guys are giving sellers at this point is not locking them in forever with just the chance of them selling. Is that most realtors in a traditional contract will ask for 6 months, maybe 4 months, or whatever it may be. You guys have a distinct difference with that too, don't you?
We certainly do. We'll do much shorter contracts. I mean, 60 days, 45 days, 90 days. That's really where our contracts, fluctuate from. And the reason is, and I always tell the sellers this, I'm going to get the information I need in the next 30 days. I don't need to drag this out. In 30 days, I'm going to have the information for you. And from then we can make a decision. And if we haven't hit what the price that you want, we can sit back down and decide what the next step is. But the next 30 days, I'm going to give you all the options you need. And from there, you can decide whether we continue forward if we haven't already sold your house. And again, that's confidence that sellers want to hear. They don't want a 6-month relationship. They want to sell their house. And by shortening up the contract, because I actually believe in that and believe in what we can do, it gives them the confidence to know that we're going to work our tails off to get their house sold in that period of time.
What would you say to a seller that ultimately has been on the marketplace previously? They've had a presentation from their realtor, okay, to list the property. They might have had a number of realtors in, and when they chose a realtor to list their home, but realistically, it didn't work for them. And now they're talking to you, and they're talking about non-distressed auction and the luxury auction platform, but none of the realtors before offered this or mentioned this at all.
Well, we get a lot of that, and we also get a lot of bad mouthing from those agents just simply because they don't understand it. So it's sellers. Do you want more of the same? Do you want, the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over and expecting a different result? Or do you want to put something into place that's been around for 130 years that will bring you an answer in the next 30 days about what your house is worth in today's market? And with that information, you can do with it as you please. And most sellers are attracted to that. They really are, because they don't want to go through another 180 days of sitting on the market, hoping and praying that something happens. They want a solution that will bring them results. And again, we don't promise a price. I'm not the agent that's going to sell them on price. I'm promising them a process that actually does something to sell their house.
I think that there's definitely some things to learn for people in all of this, in the way that, Chad is certainly presenting this to his clients on a regular basis. You can feel the passion that's coming out of him. Chad, have we missed anything today that you think that agents on the other end of this podcast or any sellers that are listening should hear about when it comes to the auction process?
No, I think again, it's been a brief introduction to why I believe so firmly that whether a house has been on the market or not, they should give auction a try. But certainly, if you had your house listed previously and you're considering about coming back on the market, you have to give auction a look, because doing the same thing again is only going to cost you money.
Absolutely. So about 75% of our audience hasn't liked, followed, or subscribed to our podcast. It would mean the world to us, and it would help this podcast more than you know to expand our reach if you were to like, follow, or subscribe on any of the platforms that you're watching or listening on. Thanks again.